Welcome to Small Spark Theory. This podcast is designed as a collection of thoughts, ideas, and practical tips on using marginal gains to help your agency new business endeavours. Small Spark Theory is created and hosted by me, Lucy Mann of Gunpowder Consulting. Hello and welcome back to Small Spark Theory. We are back in the pod today. You'll be pleased to know that I have been stalking new guests for your listening pleasure, and today is no exception. One of the questions that I often get asked by agencies is, how are we doing? How does this compare with other agencies? Are we doing well? What does good look like? Is this better or is this worse than the other clients that you're working with? And that presents me with a little bit of a problem because of the agencies that I work with, they are from all kinds of different disciplines, they are different sizes, they have different structure, different service offerings. So making any kind of comparison based on that sample is really difficult. So there are a number of reports that are available in the industry. As you know, I'm an expert with the Design Business Association, and they publish an annual agency survey that's available for members. But there's also a fantastic report produced every year called the Benchpress Report from the Wow Company. And I'm delighted to have with me in the pod today Peter Czapp from the Wow Company. Welcome, Peter.
Good morning.
Delighted to have you here. I thought it would be useful. I mean, you are, for an accountancy firm, unusually innovative, I would say, and high profile. I know you do lots of activity, or you have done over the years, with the drum, and I read about you quite a lot, and I see you at various events. Not something we normally see from accountants, so brilliant. I love to see a thought leader that's passionate about their particular area of expertise. So we're really glad to have you here today. It would be massively useful if you could just, for our listeners, tell us all a little bit about your background and how you came to set up WOW.
So one of the reasons you see me out and about quite a bit is because I have this fascination with business and what it takes to really be successful in business. And this fascination started 15 years ago when I set up WOW. And the reason we set it up, it was a small accountancy practice back then, but we were really frustrated with the accountants of the time. We felt that businesses needed more. Now, that accountancy practice over the last 15 years has evolved into the agency specialist. We work with over 450 now across the country, from Scotland all the way down, a lot here in London, which is where we are today. And what I've been able to do over the years, it's been a really interesting journey, is look at the difference between those agencies that are really, really successful and those that find it a challenge. And I've always been fascinated by it, exploring the difference between the two. And that fascination has led to a number of things sort of popping up over the years that have made a massive difference to the agency world. So the first thing that happened was we noticed a lot of our clients coming to us with very, very similar challenges, not just accountancy ones, but challenges around, well, guess what, winning new business, challenges around making that profitable, hiring great talent and managing that talent, and I guess spinning all those plates that you have to do as an agency owner. So what we wanted to do was create a community that really solved those challenges. So the Agency Collective was born. It's now the largest community of its type in the UK. It's got nearly 500 agency owners that meet at events in Edinburgh and Manchester and Bristol and London, and meet every day on Slack. And it's a wonderful community of agency owners that get together to help each other build better agencies. We provide great content, but also a lot of these challenges are solved by each other, by the community. And that's given me an enormous amount of pleasure watching that grow. And something else that spun out of WOW on this journey for us becoming agency experts was, as you mentioned, this desire amongst agency owners to know, well, how am I doing? And how do I compare to the others? So what we decided to do, started I think 7 years ago, we ran a very, very small survey. In fact, it wasn't a survey. We were able to gather data from 100 of our clients, and we published a benchmark report called Benchpress, and we had no idea what it was going to become. Back then it was an 8-page report, and if you take off the front cover and the back cover, there wasn't a lot in it, I have to confess. But what was in it really captured people's imaginations. There were stats around profitability and growth rates and revenue per head, and how people were performing in cash flow and how quickly they got paid. And suddenly there was the opportunity for people to compare themselves to other people, compare themselves not just to the average, because who wants to be average, but compare themselves to the top performing agencies. And we saw the power of that and grew that first Benchpress report to what it is now, which is an annual survey that goes out. Over 500 agency owners take part. We then produce a report which is downloaded over 5,500 times by agencies across the UK. And it is gold dust, absolute gold dust, because it contains information that you can't get literally anywhere else. You can't ask people at networking events some of the questions that we get to ask.
No.
And we publish it all anonymously.
Yeah.
And I know that it inspires people to take action. So we're more than just an accountancy firm. As you can see, we take our responsibility as leaders in the agency space really seriously, and we want to create things that make a real difference. So that's why we've set up Benchpress. That's why we've set up Agency Collective. And I guess that's why I'm here.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Obviously, as you touched on there, one of the key areas that you measure is new business, and obviously that's my area of real interest. I'm interested to know what the latest round of findings has produced, if there are any key trends there that have caught your interest.
Plenty that have caught my interest. So what we do is we pick different topics each year for Benchpress. If we just pick the same ones, it would get boring. And the reason we've gone back and revisited new business is because it's the number one challenge for agencies.
Yeah.
In fact, it always has been the number one challenge. But this year, what we discovered was it's just got that little bit harder. So this year, 44% of agencies said that new business was their number one challenge. That's up from 38% last year.
Okay.
So it's harder than it ever has been for agencies to win new business. So we really wanted to delve deep into this subject and look at all of the different tactics that agencies use, what the top performing ones are doing differently, some of the clever things that they're doing, and what separates those from the rest. So we really delved deep into the report this year.
Okay. And what were some of the things that the best performing agencies are doing? Do tell.
This was really fascinating. So we asked the question. We asked three questions. We asked, list all the things that you do to generate new business. And then we asked, what's the most effective? And then what's the least effective? And you could only select one option. Okay. So you really were forced to pick one. And the most effective way of picking up new business for agencies, is what agency owners told us, was networking. In fact, 21% said that networking was the number one thing that brought them new business. And so you think, well, the obvious solution is to all just run out and do more networking, but don't, because I have another piece of information for you, which I think is really interesting. In the answer to the question, what's the worst way of picking up new business, the one that doesn't work? Well, guess what appeared in the top 6? Networking. So it goes to show this isn't about simply a case of let's go and do that one thing and it'll all be fine. It's about the execution that really, really matters here. And wildly going off and doing networking without a plan, without focus, without really thinking about who you're targeting and what you want to get out of this is pointless. Yeah. So sure, I think that the stats say it was quite a clear winner. Yeah. Networking is clearly a good thing to build into your program of activity, but there has to be a plan behind it. And that concept of planning and thinking and putting time into strategy is one that reoccurs throughout all of the research we've done over the last 15 years. And it always plays out.
That's really interesting. And one of the conversations that I've been having with my clients over the last couple of years, and certainly even with your Agency Collective audience, I think, at one of the recent events, is about how you engage with your network. So not just networking, i.e. going out to events to meet new people, but how you manage your own network and how you look after them and you keep them inspired. And actually you actually keep that data somewhere and you know who your network is and you know how big it is and you understand the dynamics of that network and how you keep in touch with those people. And I think maybe perhaps it's a lot of the performance there that's delivering new business and incremental revenue, whereas perhaps some of the colder, less planned, less strategic networking is the bit that people find isn't really delivering, perhaps.
Absolutely. I think you have to take a long-term view of this. This is another reoccurring theme we see in our research. The agencies that are performing better are taking long-term decisions. They're not going to a networking event and say, well, that didn't work, it's rubbish, I'm going to trash that. They're saying, well, look, what are we trying to achieve as a business? Who it is that we're specifically targeting, and let's get really, really focused. Let's get niche. Let's narrow that down, and then let's work out where they hang out. If you're not sure, well, ask your clients. Find your ideal clients. Go to them and say, which events do you attend? Which conferences do you go to? And find out where the ones you really want to work with hang out, and then go and join them. Can you get an invite? Can you, even better, get an invite to be a speaker at that particular event? Do you have a piece of content that particular audience would absolutely adore? Not just find interesting, but adore, fall in love with, forward to their friends. And that's the challenge for everyone listening to this, is not just who you want to target, but what message can you give them? What can you give them that's going to make a massive difference to their business? It's going to transform their world. It isn't just that was quite nice, quite interesting, but they're going to go wild for it, and they're going to love you for it. Have a think about that, and if you're not sure, ask your clients, ask the ones you really want to work with. They'll tell you.
Fab. I'm wondering if there are any other findings that come from the new business questions that have interesting correlations around the other questions in the survey. So I'm wondering if there are any kind of direct correlations between new business and size, or breakdown of the people in the teams, or any of those other things.
There's lots. There's tons. The ones that really interest me. So let me explain a little bit how we put the report together. So we do the survey in January, do a lot of analysis in February. So I'm very lucky. I've got a fantastic data analyst in Tom, who works at WOW, and we go through and analyse that, and then we publish the report. And it's quite in March. It's quite an undertaking to get that out. And to be honest, I need a lie down. So I have a little lie down, and then what we do is we go through the data in more detail. And so what the listeners will see in the report is really just the tip of the iceberg. We then look at that and we say, right, we look for these correlations. And the one that always interests me is profitability. So growth rate's fine, but it's a vanity measure, right? Yeah. I'm really interested in profitability. And we often look at the top 25% of agencies by profitability and look at what they're doing. And what we discovered when it comes to new business is they're really good at referrals. They have a disproportionately high number of clients from referrals compared to the rest. And when you think about that, that's kind of obvious, really, because it's less effort, pick up a client from a referral, and it's less costly. So that seems like a smart thing to do. And when we delve deeper, so the stats will tell you one thing, but we go exploring. I go asking questions. I go looking for this. And when I chat to the agencies that are doing this, I discover that they're conscious about it. They have active programs that seek to generate opportunities from their existing clients. And little things like, I mean, it's wonderful LinkedIn these days, the way you can see who your clients are connected to. And they make sure that, these people who are senior positions in market, or senior marketing positions within organisations, well, they have friends who are also in senior positions within organisations. They left, a company 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and there's potential for introductions there. So they really build relationships with these people and seek to gain referrals, not just to other organisations, but also they're really smart about gaining referrals within an organisation. I look at sort of the client bases of some of our clients. I'm like, oh my goodness, you could just spend a lifetime just in that one client.
Absolutely.
And you never need to go and pick up any new business again. And being conscious of that and putting time and effort into it and saying, well, look, I'm sure people will have objectives around new business, but do they also have objectives around expanding their existing client base? Because evidence shows you that the agencies that do are more profitable. And the other thing linked to this topic is, and I love it when this happens, when we look at the data, we look for correlations. Often there aren't any. I'm thinking, there must be one between this and this.
Nothing.
But then occasionally we find stuff, and it's really interesting. So we noticed a massive tipping point when it comes to the length of client relationship. So in this year's report, we look at how long clients stay with an agency. And then we compare that to profitability. And if an agency is to retain a client for 3 years or more, they have a much higher chance of being in that elite bracket when it comes to profitability. So if you, and again, it's kind of obvious, really. If you're only working with someone for a couple of years, and you think about the effort that goes in to winning that business, onboarding them as a client, and all of the energy that goes into making that relationship work in the early stages, if it's just going to be a fleeting 6 months, 1 year, that's hard work.
Yeah.
That's really hard work. But
Yeah.
if you can get to that 3-year point, and several agencies you'll see in the stats are building relationships with clients consistently for 5 years or more, well, that's when it really starts to get interesting. That's where you can start to really ramp up your profitability. So those were two particular trends around profitability that were interesting, focusing on referrals and focusing on length of client relationship.
Great. You remind me actually about the episode where we talked to Jim Hawker from 3Pipe, and he went into quite a lot of detail about how they've focused really heavily on client development and how they can build better, deeper relationships with their clients, and how they've managed to grow their referrals, again, not only from referring from one client to another, but within those businesses. And it's just worked really well from just having a plan, understanding the data and having a plan and delivering on it. So
I'm not surprised. And this is the thing. Everyone will have a plan, or hopefully everyone will have a plan for new business, but will they have a plan for their existing clients? Will they have someone responsible for it? Will they have stats on the wall that they measure every single month? And if you're not doing that, this is really easy to fix. Here's the good news. It's really easy to fix.
It is. And there's a really interesting, I've noticed there's quite a difference in the different disciplines of agency in terms of how their client service team is tasked around client development. So in some disciplines, the client service team are very much project managers and are there to deliver projects, but their relationship with the client is very much about getting the job done, and it's a very on the back foot, reactive relationship. Whereas, and I've noticed that actually quite a lot in digital, whereas in other disciplines, the relationships are far more business focused, and the client service teams are having business conversations with clients rather than just project conversations. And if you can make that shift, then so that all of your client facing people understand how they can have those business conversations rather than project conversations, then that's a game changer.
And if you look around your team and you see that situation you described, which is project focused people, can you either train them up or can you bring in more account focused people? And this often happens in small agencies where the account management and the project management get lumped together in one bundle, and look, you can do both. Well, that's really tricky. And here's what will happen. What will get sacrificed will always be the account management, because if someone delivers a project on time and on budget, they'll get a big tick. But actually, that's only part of the job. It's then looking for the next project. And I spoke to a client recently, and they have a really neat dashboard system. So for every single client, they make sure that there's a program of work for the next 6 months, that they have generated at least one referral from them in the last 6 months. So they track this on an ongoing basis. And there's a few other little measures. And you could probably, if you're sat there thinking, maybe what I could do one of these dashboards. You definitely could. But what would matter to you? What makes this a profitable client for you, and one that's going to still be profitable in 6 months and 12 months in 3 years? So that's a really interesting exercise to do. There were some other really interesting correlations that we got around business performance as well. So as I mentioned, it wasn't just around what you do, it's around how you do it, the execution. There's something also really interesting happening around with agencies that get really forensic about the details on this, that don't just leave it to chance. So one of the questions we asked is, the answer we got was basically a return on investment. We asked two questions. We asked how much they spent on marketing last year, total marketing spend, all sales and marketing activity, including staff. And then we asked for how much new business they won in the last 12 months. So from that, we're able to work out a return on investment. And what I can tell you is that the average agency gets a 6 times return on investment, and the top performing agencies, top 25%, get a 10 times return on investment. So if you're spending £100,000 on your sales and marketing activity, the top performing agencies are getting £1 million worth of new business back from that. That's a hell of a challenge for agencies. And what it will force you to do is to stop and think, what am I doing? What returns are they getting? And what do I need to do differently? And it's about, I think a lot of this is about being conscious of this and not sleepwalking into doing the same stuff you did previously.
Yeah.
So that really stuck for me. And there's also another great stat in the report around, we ask a question about qualification.
Yes.
So we said, for each new business opportunity, do you calculate the chances of success? And 13% said no. So I honestly think they're in big trouble. They just get on with the proposal or pitch. 58%, well, we kind of do. We use a gut feel to get a rough likelihood of winning it. But the most profitable ones, and there is a direct correlation here, are the ones that use a scoring system. So 29% work out their chances of success based on a scoring system. So they ask really smart questions around, well, how many other agencies are involved in the process? Is there an incumbent agency? What the budget is? What the timescales are? What the decision-making process will be? And based on that, they then make a decision, not just whether to go for it or not, but how much resource to put into it. And these are the ones, we've got these stats in it, we've got the data on it, that are the most profitable. So if you're not in that 29%, you've got to ask yourself, why? Why aren't you taking the time to do this?
And I'm so glad you said that, and I'm so glad that the data supports that, because I work with all of my clients to put together a bespoke scoring system for them so that they can evaluate opportunities. And again, not just to decide whether or not they go for it, but again, at what point do they start to commit resource to that? Because losing pitches or losing new business opportunities is not only going to affect your profit margin, but it's also going to affect morale. You know, if you lose 2 or 3 opportunities in a row, you lose so much time, valuable time, but it just really affects everybody's confidence. People will worry about their job security. It just has such a which is why, we spoke to Jemima Muniz from Adam and Eve last year, I think it was last summer, and she was talking about a time where they won, I think they had 3 kind of concurrent pitches, big pitches that they won all 3, and how that momentum that occurred when you're on a winning streak like that, and you are invincible. You're getting the best creative happening. The team are absolutely all on their A game. But the opposite happens if you're on a losing streak. So yeah, really, really good to see that the stats bear out that really having that scoring system in place works.
100%. And this idea of getting forensic about the details, it really matters. I know you talk a lot about marginal gains, but this is the game we're playing. If you're just going to try and wing it, well, you're going to get results commensurate with that. So if you're really serious about building a business that is profitable and sustainable, then this is the stuff that you need to do. And I think that for many agencies, this is partly about this journey of sort of growing up as a business. When you start off, sometimes you might start off as a freelancer, might be get a couple of friends involved, and then suddenly there's a team of 5 of you and then 10 of you. And the behaviours in the early stages of that business are not going to be the ones that take you to where you need to get to. In fact, they'll hold you back. So, it was fine in the early days just to get on to do it, roll your sleeves up and do it. But now it requires more thought. And that thought will lead you to a better place, always.
I'm wondering whether, at the time of recording, we are deep still in the grips of Brexit discussions. I feel like I've been saying this forever. I'm interested, when you look back at previous reports, if there's a correlation between our political stalemate and how agencies are performing.
So we have some really interesting stats on this. So a couple of years ago, when the vote was taking place, we asked the question, basically, how did you vote? And 84% of agency owners voted to remain. That's really high.
That's really high.
And over the years that have unfolded since the vote, we've gone back in and checked on the impact that the vote has had. And the first thing to say is, undoubtedly, there's individual stories of agency owners that have had the phone call from the client saying, because of Brexit, we are pulling that budget. And that has really hurt several of our clients and several people listening to this, and that's a really tough situation to be in. But when asked the question calmly in the survey, what impact has Brexit actually had on your business, 67% said it was a neutral impact. There'd been no impact at all. 25% had experienced one of those negative situations, and 8% actually said it had been positive. Now, a couple of other stats that are interesting. Each year we track how much agencies grow by. We also track how much they plan to grow by, but then we also track how much they actually grow by, because there's often a gap. And agencies are growing. So last year, 2018, agencies grew by at a quicker rate than in any year since the recession.
Interesting.
So we've been tracking this for a long time, since 2008. And last year, 2018, agencies grew quicker than in any year since the recession. So I'm just going to qualify that. So there's a number of stats we look at when it comes to growth rate. So this is revenue growth rate. But just to give it some context, one of the questions we asked was, we found out how many agencies grew by more than 25% revenue. And if you sat there listening to this thinking, well, that's just the little guys. Well, actually, there's no change in growth rates up to 2 million revenue.
Okay.
So I found that really interesting. I thought that, it's easy to grow, when you're 100, 200 grand turnover, by these high percentages. But actually, the growth rates are consistent up to 2 million revenue.
2 million, right.
Once you get to 2 million, the data shows, well, it's a bit harder to grow by those 30, 40% each year. So we asked the question, we found out how many agencies grew by more than 25%. 2018, it was 39%. Grew by more than 25%. That's a really big number. Think about that for a second. 39% of agencies grew by more than 25% revenue. That was up from 34 the year before, up from 29% in 2016. So growth rates for agencies are increasing. They're doing better than in any year since the recession. But what's interesting this year, in 2019, is that confidence has just dipped slightly. So confidence has been rising since the recession, and it's peaked at 71 in 2018, and it's just dropped in this is sentiment. This is basically how good you feel about the prospects for the business over the next 12 months. Score out of 100, and it's dropped from 71 to 70, and that sort of barometer was taken in January this year. So it'll be interesting to see what that looked like now. I'd probably guess that it's stable, and it'll be interesting to see what actual impact that has on growth rates when we do the same survey in 2020.
Yes.
So we'll be able to share whether that dip in sentiment was a leading indicator to a levelling off or even a drop in growth rates. But as it stands at the moment, agencies are on the crest of a wave on the whole.
Good. I'm really pleased to hear that. Long may that continue. So based on 7 iterations of this report, all the data that you've looked at, I'm going to ask you a really difficult question now. So I'm going to ask you, you're welcome. I'm going to ask you to come up with 3 pieces of advice that you could sit here today and say to agencies, right, 3 things. If you're just going to do 3 things, make sure you're focusing on these.
Okay, so always profit first. You've got to think about profit everywhere in your business, but especially when it comes to new business. And there is no point winning a client if it's not going to be profitable. So, I mean, there's so many wonderful resources out there that talk about this. I've been talking about it for years, but thinking about profit, thinking about your pricing, thinking about the type of clients you really want to work with, and putting that right at the centre of your business. When I talk to agency owners, I say, what are your plans for the next 12 months? They'll always tell me about how much they want to grow by revenue. I want to grow by 10%, 20%. And then they will kind of keep their fingers crossed they make money at the end of it. Instead, start with profit first. Work out how much money you want to make at the end of the year. And then work backwards. Look at your overheads, what resource do you need, and then you can look at what revenue you need. And then you can break that down and come up with a plan. But start with profit first, always.
Lovely.
That's the first tip. The second one, and this is the challenge for everyone, regardless of stage your agency is at, is to get niche. Focus on a particular niche. Our research shows that the agencies that focus on niches are the most profitable. It's kind of obvious, really, when you think about it, because if you're a specialist in something, you can charge more. It also helps tremendously when it comes to marketing. So if you were an agency that works with anyone, where do you start?
Yeah.
It's paralysing.
Yeah.
You can't start anywhere.
Yeah.
So getting niche is really, really important. So that could be based on a sector, or it could be based on a specialism. And if you're really smart, you'll find a specialism and take it to a particular sector, and that's where it gets
really
where the magic really happens. So, and if you're sat there thinking, well, yeah, we're pretty good at niching. My challenge to you is to what's the next level? What is the next level? And a really good practical tip you can do, and I know this works because I've had emails from people who have tried it and have been delighted with the results. Is a really practical tip now. Write down your list of your top 10 dream clients, the people that you would absolutely love to work with. Write them down on a bit of paper, and then go share them with your team. Go share them with the wider world. Start talking about it often, and just say, look, in the next 12 months, put them up in your office. We want to work with these. Start exploring where you could find people connected to these businesses, and wonderful things will happen. I promise you. So I've had so many stories where someone will say, well, I put down such and such a company, and then suddenly an old friend of mine popped up on LinkedIn, and I realised I used to work with him, and I got in touch, and we just won a 20 grand project. Okay, that's really neat. Was that luck? I don't think so. So it all starts with getting niche and writing that.
And you become
list.
really tuned in, though, don't you? Once you start stating those prospects and people know about it, you suddenly become tuned into the conversations that are happening about those businesses in a different way. And I think that's what makes it. That's what makes things start to happen.
So my final tip, my third tip would be, I guess there's two parts to this, but it's around the planning and taking time out to, number one, do new business and put this in your diary as the first thing that you do each day or each week. It just cannot be moved because the danger is if you say, well, look, new business is the thing that I will do once I've done all the other stuff. Once I put out all of those myriad of fires that are going on in my agency at this point in time, you'll never get round to it. And you'll get to the end of the week exhausted and tired. And someone will say, how's your week? Oh, I've been really busy. But you won't get round to doing this important thing. So carve time out for new business. And also you need to carve time out for planning. So a really fascinating statistic from this year's Benchpress Report. We asked how agency owners would like to spend their time, what they would like to do more of and what they would like to do less of. 75% of agency owners said they'd like to spend more time on strategy. 75%. So they understand intuitively that more time out to do planning is a good thing. Now, when we then went and did our additional research, what we discovered was there was an incredible correlation between the amount of time people spent doing strategy and their profitability. And in fact, the top performing agency owners by profit spent 10 hours a week more on strategy than the rest. 10 hours a week. That's basically a long day, a day and a bit. Yeah. And you think, if you sat there thinking, my goodness, I can't afford to take a whole day out a week to spend on strategy. Well, what can you afford? And what could you put in? Could you put in half a day? Could you put in an hour each day? Just to actually stop. And before you open your emails, before you go into the office and get bombarded, to stop and think and come up with a plan. I promise you it will make a massive, massive difference if you can put those chunks of time in your diary and stick to them. And there's some tips in the report around how you can actually take time out. And, you know, a really good practical thing you can do is actually book and pay for meeting facilities, because then you're committed to it. One of our clients does this incredible thing where they'll book an Airbnb in North Norfolk and they'll spend 3 days there away from the family, away from the agency, and they'll put a plan in place each year and then make sure that each month they've got half a day out to go and review it. And I think, look, you don't need to book 3 days off in North Norfolk, however lovely it is, but
whatever it takes,
your version of it, and you have to do it and find it a real challenge without it. So those are my 3 tips: profit, niche, and time for planning.
Amazing, amazing advice. Thank you, Peter. And to your last point, my experience of new business programs that happen when there's a sudden hole in the revenue are the ones that fail, because an agency will pull the trigger and they'll think, right, we need new business, and they will either hire a new business agency or hire a new business person, and then there's this sudden spike of activity, investment, time, and maybe a couple of interesting conversations. Maybe they get lucky and there might be a win, but then there follows this kind of slow curve of disappointment. The agency gets fired or the new business person gets fired and we're back to square one again. And it's because there hasn't been the planning. Yep. Always there hasn't been the planning. It's been a knee-jerk reaction just to say, hole in the revenue. And new business doesn't work like that. You can't just turn it on, turn it off, as we know. So, great advice. I would like to know which book you would recommend to our readers.
So there's a particular author called Blair Enns, who I'm a massive fan of.
He's a friend of Small Spark Theory.
Okay, I'm not surprised. So his Win Without Pitching manifesto is a phenomenal book, and it talks about some of the things we've talked about today, you know, carving out your niche, carving out your place in the market where you don't have competition, and how you can get paid what you're really, really worth as an agency. I see so many agency owners doing like wonderful work and just not having the confidence to charge what they're really worth for it. And that's a shame. So Win Without Pitching manifesto, in fact, any of the books by Blair is ones to definitely have on your bookshelf. His latest one, Pricing Creativity,
is astounding.
Yeah, is astounding. And I'd encourage you to look at both, but Win Without Pitching manifesto is what I'm going to go with. It's a wonderful gift for everyone.
Lovely. Well, our listeners will be delighted with that because, of course, we give away a copy of your chosen book to one of our lucky listeners. So you know what to do. You can join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #SmallSparkTheory, and we will pick a winner and send a copy of Win Without Pitching. My last question, I'd love to know what was the best piece of advice that you've been given in your career?
So I've been given lots. I've been really lucky to have some great mentors and continue to have some great mentors. And the one thing that I've been given, a piece of advice that I've been given consistently, but only just starting to pay attention to recently, and I wish I'd paid attention to it a lot sooner, was this idea of slowing down to enjoy the journey. So if you're running a business, if you're responsible for teams, if you're responsible for innovating and guiding your clients, that's a wonderful thing. Yeah. That's a wonderful thing. It's a great gift to be running a business and being at the forefront of that. And the challenge that comes with it are many. We know that. And I think it's really important that agency owners get out of this survival stage as quickly as possible. So it's really helpful to rush around in the early days, roll your sleeves up, and there's lots of effort and energy. But if you keep in that mode, that survival mode, it becomes a chore, a challenge. And I see so many agency owners burn out, get to a point where they're just fed up. And that's a real shame. When you went into this to this idea to make a difference and for freedom and to express your creativity, and you create this vehicle that should be giving you the opportunity to do all of those things. And I think sometimes it's important just to slow down, to enjoy that journey and to make it a really enriching experience. And the more that you enjoy it, the more your team will enjoy it, the more your clients will enjoy it. Yeah. And I promise you, it will lead to commercial success.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
This isn't some sort of hippie manifesto we can all just sort of go and chill out. It always leads to commercial success. So slow down, enjoy the journey, and good things will happen. Thanks, Peter. You've been absolutely brilliant today. Lots of superb advice there for our listeners, and we will be supplying links to WOW and to the report and to the Agency Collective in the supporting blog. And thanks very much. Thank you. You have been listening to Small Spark Theory, brought to you by Gunpowder Consulting. Join in the conversation on Twitter at Gunpowder Tweets using the hashtag #SmallSparkTheory. This podcast is created and hosted by me, Lucy Mann, and edited and produced by Isabel Jarvis. Music is provided by Duke Deck, available at dukedeck.com, and this episode was recorded at The Pod at White City Place. For more information and to download further episodes, head to our blog at gunpowderconsulting.com. And if you like what you hear, head to iTunes and leave us a star.